You're listening to episode 119, Finding the Hope to Get Through the Aftermath of Abuse with Jessica Emily. Welcome to the Grass Gets Greener podcast, the show for survivors by survivors. I'm your host, Melissa Wilson, a bullying survivor and anti-bullying advocate. And each week you'll hear from a survivor who has overcome a traumatic experience to go on to not only survive, but thrive, so that you can too, starting now. Hey there, welcome and thanks for tuning in to this first episode of Year 4 of the podcast. I hope you had a chance to check out the last episode, which was a recap for Year 3, where I compiled all of my guest answers to the final question that I ask everyone. You can find that at thegrassgetsgreener.com/recap and the number 5, if you'd like to check that one out after. But right now we're going to be joined by Jessica Emily, or maybe you know her better as Littlest Lady from littlestlady.com. Jessica blogs about her journey of surviving child abuse, showing others that there is life after abuse. So I'm excited to have her on the show today, to have her share her inspiring and hopeful story with you. In particular, Jessica is going to talk about how it was being re-traumatized after her initial abuse that led to a lot of the struggles she went through, including how she developed debilitating OCD. She's going to share how her symptoms and the way they were affecting her life pushed her into recovery, and how CBT helped her to heal. And she'll talk about how starting her blog was the first time she really went public with her story and what that was like for her. And she'll talk about where the name Littlest Lady came from, and how she never expected to be doing as well as she is today. And we talk a lot about pushing through because things can get better, and she'll share what helped her push through on difficult days. So I hope you're looking forward to this episode with Jessica, and without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it, and I'll go bring her on. Jessica, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining me here today to share your story with us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. I first came across you on Instagram and saw that you were a survivor and that you were showing others that there is life after trauma, and you have a great blog where you write about your story and topics related to trauma, so I definitely wanted to have you on the show to share your story with us and to provide hope and inspiration for those listening. And I know you talk about how you're on a mission to use your past to help others, and I think it's so great when a survivor reaches a place in their healing where they're able to do that, and that's what this show is about, sharing the stories of other survivors in an effort to help those who are still struggling and want to know that things can get better. So what I'd like to do here, Jessica, is have you start us out by sharing a little bit about what you experienced growing up, and then we'll go from there and get into how you've been able to get to where you are today. Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so, just kind of share with us what you'd like us to know about what you experienced.
So in my childhood, I was abused up to the age of about 14. It was mainly my mum that was at home, so I had emotional and physical abuse by her, and I was also sexually abused by someone close to the family. Later, when I left my mother's care, I was assaulted twice by 2 other family members. That's sort of it in a nutshell. A lot of different forms of abuse, and so that happened, I think, till about 17 was when my last sort of traumatic experience happened.
Yeah, so for a big chunk of your life growing up, sounds like it started, you said, very early on.
Yeah, very early on, yeah.
Yeah, and I know that when I was preparing for our call, I saw that you experienced a lot of bullying growing up too, is that right?
Yeah, all through school. I didn't actually go to school that much because I just,
because of the
I
bullying.
couldn't cope with it. I was like, I'm not doing this. But yeah, I did from nursery and first school and yeah, and secondary school, it was quite severe. Um, yeah, and I think sort of stuff like that maybe happened because I didn't have the support at home. I think they knew that something wasn't right in the family back home, so I didn't have that support to sort of back me up. And I was quite shy and timid anyway, so I was a bit of a target, and I think they saw that in me.
Yeah. That's so difficult too when, you're dealing with that at school and then you're dealing with things at home as well. I mean, it's like you have no break from it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have any kind of outlets at that time or anybody that you could confide in?
I was very close to my grandma. My mum used to work an awful lot, so I'd go to her house either very early in the morning before my mum would start work or late at night if she was working sort of night shifts and stuff. So I did have her. Um, I think a lot of people knew in the family that there was something wrong, there was something happening, but that was sort of a break away from it where I didn't think about that stuff. I mean, nobody would mention it, so it was a bit of an outlet for me to just go there and live, partly a normal life, even if it was just for a couple of hours.
Yeah. Did you feel like you couldn't really talk about what was happening at home because this was happening at home with your family, with your mom?
Yeah, I guess for a good chunk of my life, especially the early days, it was just normal. And yeah, I knew that that was a break when it was happening, but I didn't identify as what was happening at home with my mum as severe as it was. I didn't realize it was that unnormal
Mm-hmm.
for things like that to be happening.
Yeah. Do you have any siblings or are you an only child?
I'm an only child. I do have a step brother and sister. They're only little. But yeah, I was very much on my own back then.
Yeah. I can relate to that in some ways. I mean, I'm an only child myself. And while, most of what I went through was outside of the home, with the bullying at school, I mean, there was a little bit of abuse at home as well. It wasn't, the safest environment for me, but I mean, nothing compared to kind of what you experienced. But I can definitely identify with just that feeling of being alone and not really having anyone else to turn to. Um, and
Yeah,
and actually, it's funny because I was able to kind of get some support in my grandmother as well. I used to
yeah,
spend a lot of time with her, and that was very helpful for me.
yeah. I think you need that balance just to cope with it a little bit, and maybe that's what made things a little bit easier back then. I could like have a horrendous day, but then I could switch off just for an hour, just sort of to have a reset and then go back to it, which sounds strange, but yeah, I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, just to have that break and just to kind of
Yeah,
have some sense of normalcy or just to, I guess, just to have some fun for a little bit,
yeah, yeah.
get away from all of that other stuff. Yeah, so then you said that what was going on at home ended when you were about 14?
Yeah, I got taken out of my mum's care when I was about 14. Um, the sexual abuse still carried on for a little while after that, but then all the contact from my mum stopped anyway, so that the majority of the abuse stopped then.
Gotcha. And then you were assaulted a couple of times, you said, so you still weren't like out of all of that. You still had to deal with some stuff after you left the
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
That must have made it, I mean, even more difficult and just kind of compounded matters, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a massive shock to me. My mum had kept me out of the picture, sort of a little bit with my family, and I'd settled with my life after moving out of my mum's care, and I was sort of ready to get to know the rest of my family and find out what I'd been kept away from. And it was sort of in that time of trying to get to know these people that these assaults happened. And yeah, in a really short space of time, I'd gone to live with my grandma because she was, getting a bit older and needed some help around the house. And yeah, as soon as I got into that group, I noticed that there was a lot of similar things going on. Um, Yeah, and that's when the assault happened. I don't know how close they were together. I mean, I think it was in about 6 months I'd had two assaults. The first one I'd noticed how I was starting to slip a bit. I was in a really good place after I came out of my abuse. And then, yeah, the first assault I noticed things were changing in myself. And then by the second assault, I was just, I was completely broken. And it was a huge shock that you think that, if I've now finally left such an awful thing and I've got all this family, like, and I'm going to talk to them, I'm going to do stuff with them and maybe have a little bit of normality. And then having those happen it was a massive shock.
Yeah, that's too bad. So yeah, I was gonna ask you. So you said that you were kind of doing okay when you left home,
Yeah,
and then these two assaults happened, and that just kind of set you back.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. So how are things kind of, you know, as a result of all of this? Like, what sort of things were you struggling with?
um, yeah, as I say, after the first assault, I noticed like little things had started happening. Like I was struggling to go to bed because I couldn't leave the television plug alone. That was the first thing that I noticed. And then by the second assault, I feel like someone had pressed a switch, and I had like a severe form of OCD by that point, um, where I couldn't go to bed, I couldn't leave the house because I was checking taps and plugs and things. And then that was also when my post traumatic stress symptoms had started to show as well. I was getting bad dreams and things from about my mum. So I think that was a big trigger for me, where all these symptoms that you get from abuse had been triggered off by that second assault, which was probably the worst assault out of the two.
Mm-hmm. So it just kind of like just opened up a Pandora's box. It sounds like, and
Yeah, like
yeah,
someone had pressed a button or something, and I was just, yeah,
everything
in a
just
totally different, yeah.
everything just came out. Yeah. Um, yeah, and I read that like you struggle with OCD real bad. Like that was really debilitating for you,
Yeah, it was, yeah.
and then the PTSD as well. You said. When did things kind of, start getting a little bit better for you?
Um, I think my OCD had completely taken over my life, and I couldn't go out with people. I couldn't live a normal life, and I'd moved to another city to be closer to my dad. Um, and I mean, I couldn't see him, I couldn't do anything. And I think that was the point when I was like, I need to do something about this. I think that's why I chose to recover and chose to go into therapy, because I had absolutely no life. Like, I couldn't even, um, rest from what was happening. I mean, I was like running around the house 24/7, like checking plugs, checking the door, checking the taps. And it just got to a really ridiculous point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like this isn't right, and I need to change this. Um, so that's when I decided to go into therapy, and I was advised to go into CBT, which, yeah, really changed my life to what it is today.
Yeah, I've heard, I mean, CBT can definitely be really effective for some people.
Yeah.
But what do you think, like, what about it kind of made it work for you?
Um, I think I was very much stuck in my thoughts of it's horrible. I was sort of stuck on thinking, like, why did my mum do these things? Why did the sexual abuse happen? And I was just answering these questions, and I was searching for answers and not getting anywhere, and, trying to, I don't know, figure everything out. And it wasn't something that I could figure out. I mean, it would take me till I'm, 90 to work all these things out. And I knew I wasn't getting anywhere. And I think CBT, because it's about not looking at that stuff and moving on, that's what I needed, because I felt I was very much stuck. I was stuck with um, just completing all these rituals all day, every day. I was stuck in the same thought process and I needed something to move me on from that. Now I know my abuse is horrible, but what can I do about that? What can I do to move on? And I mean, that's sort of CBT in a nutshell, is leaving all that stuff and moving on and changing your thought process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How long did you do that for?
Um, I think the last CBT I had was about 6 months, I want to say. I was having a couple of other therapies at the same time, sort of for self-care, and I also had a lot of legal stuff going on at the time. So it was very much like on and off, and I had a couple of other things. But I think altogether it was about 6 months before I was like not completing any OCD rituals anymore.
Oh, that's pretty good. It sounds like, I mean, to go from being, completely consumed by it to,
Yeah,
it sounds like, getting your life back, really.
yeah,
And I guess that's because, like, with OCD, I mean, it's a lot of it is, has to do with your thoughts, right? So it makes
yeah,
sense that CBT would be a good approach for that.
yeah. Oh, it definitely was.
Did it help with the PTSD symptoms as well?
Yeah, I mean, I was working through a lot of my abuse at the time, and though CBT is not really about talking about that stuff, because I had a lot of legal stuff going on at the time, and I sort of had to work through that a little bit, and especially with noticing the patterns, because the behavior that my mum was doing, the things that she used to do, was also repeated in my auntie and my uncle, the people that assaulted me. And I think my therapist was very interested in the pattern that my things happened. Um, so yeah, I worked through a lot of that stuff, along with the OCD, and the exposure therapy that I did for my OCD.
Mm-hmm. So, were there any other things outside of therapy that helped you to heal?
Reading books. Um, yeah, I think just really learning about what I had. Um, because I remember that was the first thing my therapist said to me, like, you need to learn about what you had, because I'd gone into therapy like, what am I doing? Like, I can't leave the tap alone. I don't know what it is. Like, I don't even think I was probably properly diagnosed with OCD until I actually went into therapy. I think it was sort of like a loose comment that had just been thrown around by the doctors. And it wasn't until I went into therapy that she was like, this is OCD, like, go and learn about it and then we'll start. So I think books helped me a lot. And online, looking at the online community of what people were going through and looking at similar experiences to what I had.
And what kinds of books? These are related to the OCD or other types?
Um, yeah, OCD.
Yeah,
Oh, I
just
can't
getting a
remember.
better understanding of it.
Yeah, I mean, all sorts of books, and a lot of books that, you know, um, about abuse. I found a lot of helpful books about abuse, and yeah, all sorts of books, really.
Yeah, I think, it helps to kind of to look into that stuff, look into the things that you're struggling with, right? Because then it helps you to see that you're not alone and what you're going through is not crazy, right? Like
Yeah,
like you're not crazy
yeah,
for what you're
definitely.
struggling with. Yeah. Now, at this time, like, were you able to confide in anyone outside of therapy? Or did people still
Um,
not really know about what you had gone through?
no, around the time that I was first going through my therapy, I'd started my blog. My blog started in about 2012, so it was around that time. And around that time was, I mean, my starting my blog was literally telling everyone about my abuse. Before that, nobody had any idea. So yeah, I sort of had that to deal with, sort of telling everyone. Um,
What was that like?
uh, very mixed. I mean, even my closest friends like had, I don't want to say no idea, because something was very odd at home, and I think people knew that. People picked on up on things, but nobody knew that I was gonna like start a website and be like, I've been quiet for the last like 17 years of my life is because, abuse. Like, I don't have a normal family setup like most of my friends. I mean, I come from a group of friends that have very good families and supportive, and yeah, it was a massive shock to people.
Hmm.
And it was difficult for me, but I mean, it's probably one of the best things that I've ever done was starting my blog. So, I mean, I guess you have to take the good with the bad, but yeah.
What made you decide to start the blog when you did?
Um, I don't know. I always want to help people. Um, and I don't know. I had this thing where, the name of my blog is Littlest Lady, and I'd always been the little one in friendship groups. My friends are older than me. I've always had friends a lot older than me, and I'd always been looked at as like I needed to be looked after. Like everyone was always checking if I was all right, and I was like, I sort of want to say to people like I've been through like a lot, and I can almost deal with life better than you'd expect. I think people meet me and think like, oh, I must have come from like a really privileged background, and I'm very like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I was just always looked at as the little one that couldn't really do much for herself, and people felt like they needed to help me. So I think it was a bit of me sort of saying like, I can look after myself because I've been through like all this stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that pushed me, and I was like, I'm gonna do it this way. I hadn't told anyone beforehand, and I just was like, I'm just gonna go for it. Like I can help people with this stuff, especially after learning about the patterns and reading books where I saw that these patterns were happening. And I was like, how many people are going through these things and have no idea? Because knowing where my abuse came from and that it started generations back really helped me heal and recover from my abuse. It was a huge eye opener for me.
Yeah, and has it been healing for you to blog about all of this stuff as well?
Yeah, definitely. And meeting people that are going through similar.
Hmm. Yeah. And how is your blog doing? I mean, it seems like it gets a lot of traction.
Um, yeah, I mean, I just love it. I do. Like, I had to have a break recently because I realized that I was just burning out. I mean, I work 8-hour days, and I do a bit of blogging in the morning. I go to work, and then I sit, I mean, on the computer till, oh, I wouldn't like to say what time. I mean, 11, half 11. And I think I just had these like a couple of years of just doing that. And recently I just burnt myself out because I was just enjoying it, and just embracing my blog. And until recently, when I sort of had to stop and rethink things a little bit, and looking at what direction I wanted to go my blog to go in, and what features I wanted to bring in. um yeah, I just love it. I just wish I could do more, but it's just figuring some things out.
Hmm. And you recently like redid your website, right?
Yeah, you did, which was a big job in itself.
Yeah. Nice. And yeah, I think you have such great graphics on there. I mean, you do them all yourself?
Oh, thank you. Some of it I've done myself. Some of it has come from someone else doing the pictures of me were done by somebody else. Um, yeah, some stuff's me, but most of it's the pictures are from someone else.
Gotcha. Yeah, do you have like an artistic background or?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, art helped me through an awful lot of stuff. Art was the thing I went to when I was going through some of the worst times in my abuse. It was sort of art and music that got me through, yeah, really hard times in my life. Um, yeah, I love art. I really do.
That's great. Yeah, so I mean, how are you doing today, Jessica?
Um, yeah, good. Yeah. When I left my therapy, I was sort of I felt set for taking on life and like living a little bit, and I feel I'm sort of still on that path. I've completed no OCD rituals since I left therapy. I've had no symptoms of post-traumatic stress. I mean, yeah, things are really good actually. I'm very lucky and grateful for my CBT that, I mean, it's completely changed my life.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah.
I can recall another guest I had on a while back who was really raving about CBT as well and how much it had helped her to really just heal from the things that she was struggling with.
Yeah.
So that's great. I mean, are there any things that do come up for you every once in a while that you struggle with?
No, not really. Um, yeah, there
That's great.
isn't. Yeah, there isn't. I mean, I recently did a blog post talking about this stuff because I get asked so much, like, what's left over from my abuse. So I'm like, nothing. And, that was a real struggle for me, like saying nothing. But I mean, there isn't. I think I'm just in a really, really good space. I'm, yeah, very grateful for life. And I think that's what's pushed me through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, did you think that you would get to where you are right now, where you're really not struggling with anything at all?
No, never. Like, yeah, I think I always say that I think I'm still in shock that I'm even here. Yeah, I mean, when it was happening, I think you can't really see past the end of the day. Like, I think I had to take every day at a time. Um, yeah, no way did I think I'd be where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so incredible that, that you are where you're at. And that's why, I really like to encourage people to just kind of to hang on and, even if it's really tough, try to push through because you never know when things can change and when they can, just get so much better for you.
Yeah,
I think there always has to be kind of that hope for that.
yeah. Oh, there definitely does. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that's what's really great about your story is how, you went from all of that, everything that you dealt with growing up, and you were able to work through it. And, now here you are today doing really well.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think because I spoke to my therapist like about that. Like, will that shock like ever go away? I don't know if it's shock, but it's this disbelief that yeah, I'm still here. Um, yeah, it's a really weird feeling.
It must
Especially, I
make,
mean,
sorry, go ahead.
just especially when I mean I had um suicide attempts, and I lived in a really, really violent, you know, it was a violent atmosphere, it was a really violent background. I mean, the physical abuse itself is weird to think that I got through some of the things that happened. Um, yeah, and I don't think that'll ever like click with me that that I am still here. And even my therapist was like, yeah, I don't think you can ever like really put that into perspective.
Mm-hmm. But you are, and that's great,
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's hard to go through that stuff, and it's not easy.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
easy when you're struggling and you're trying to heal. But if
yeah.
you can get to the other side of that, it can be so fulfilling,
I
and
can, yeah.
yeah. So I know that we've been, talking about your blog and the work that you're doing on there. Is there anything else that you have going on today that you want to mention?
Um, no, not really. I mean, I just sort of want to progress in my blog. I mean, I work as a diversional therapist, and that's sort of my day job. But I think just want to further my blog a lot more. I'm looking at doing live streams and stuff at the minute, just to communicate. I think is a big thing that I'm really lacking at the moment is communicating with people. So yeah, it's more just furthering my blog is all I'm ever doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. So, Jessica, I want to ask you the final question that I have for you today.
Yeah.
And that is, given what you know now, if you could go back to when you were going through your tough times and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, just to keep going, just to keep pushing and stay strong because it does get better. I think that's all really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, like that's kind of like what we've been talking about. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's important to keep going, to push through.
Yeah, I mean, I did have those thoughts back then, but it always sort of fell through. Like, you go through moments of like trying, and then, yeah, I mean, it's just keeping that mentality and thinking, it does get better. Just keep, pushing through it.
Yeah, in those moments, it's hard.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, were you thinking that at that time? That, I just have to keep pushing through, or was
uh,
that more of a challenge?
uh, I think I had moments of it. Um, Yeah, I mean, especially as I got a little bit older, I was like, because I think, I don't know if it's still the same, but back in the UK, I mean, you can leave home at 16, and I was like 14, and I was like, I just have to get to 16, and then maybe I can like live like a little bit differently, but I mean, I got, yeah, lifted out of my abuse sooner than that, so I think I was like, things can be better if I get away from, my main abuser. But yeah, that often fell through when I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm even gonna get like to the end of the day. That was a big like I'd start like I can do this, like it's gonna be fine, and then it would quickly sort of that process would sort of go.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, so what kind of, when you had those days where it was difficult just to get through it, like what helped you, you know?
I don't know. I honestly don't. I mean, I just used to I wasn't at school because I refused to go just because it was so bad there. And I was like, I'd rather just have like one awful thing happening than like both. And I mean, I just used to listen to music and draw like all day, every day. And something like really bad would happen. And then I just sort of go and draw. And I think it was just that switch off with drawing and the creativity of it that could just sort of pull me through those things.
Yeah, so it sounds like you always had something there that you could kind of turn to, or that gave you, some hope for things to get a little bit better.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that. Just some little sliver of hope, something that you can hold on to, that can
yeah.
get you through until things start to really turn around for you.
Yeah.
So yeah. So before I let you go, what is the best way for people to find out more about you and connect with you?
Just on my website, which is littlestlady.com. I've got a contact form on there for help and advice and stuff. And then I have a business one for anyone that wants to work with me. And Instagram, I'm on a lot. So yeah, I think all my links are on my website
All right. Yeah, that sounds good.
to find stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll have that all linked up on your show notes page as well. So, Jessica, I just want to thank you for coming on here and for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it, and I think, it's one that's going to provide a lot of hope and inspiration for those listening. So, thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
All right. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the show today. This has been the Grass Gets Greener podcast, episode 119. Go to thegrassgetsgreener.com/Jessica Emily to find the links mentioned during this episode or to leave a comment. So I thought it was interesting how we were talking about hanging in there and pushing through because things can get better. If you've listened to the recap episode from last time, then you might recall that that was a common theme throughout the episodes from last year and has been before then as well. And I know it can be hard to hang in there, but I hope that my guests are giving you some hope for that light at the end of the tunnel. And definitely check out the recap episode from last time if you need some additional hope. And come back in 2 weeks for the next episode. I'm going to be joined by Carol Ann Marshall, author of I Dare You, Conquer Fear and Free Yourself from Emotional Abuse. So if you've experienced emotional abuse in particular, then that will definitely be a good episode for you to check out. Also, head over to the website to grab your free copy of the Top 10 Strategies Guide for Survivors. In it, you'll find the top 10 most common strategies my podcast guests have used for overcoming the effects of past trauma. It's a great place to get started if you're looking for some strategies that can help you in your healing journey, as they have helped my guests. And you can find that at thegrassgetsgreener.com/guide, or also on the show notes page. So be sure to grab that if you haven't yet. And lastly, don't forget to head over to iTunes or Stitcher to leave the show a rating and review so that we can reach as many survivors as possible. And as always, have hope.